I would be disappointed if there's not some long-term consequence, right? She was like,
sure,
I'm fighting sanity. Now I'm fine. Like, oh, okay. You know.
Yeah, you tend to have problems if someone's not consistently crazy. Like, wait a minute. Why are you always crazy?
Hail, Internet! It's Paul. It's Matt. The Dork Lords. We are here talking about Lovecraft Country, Season 1, Episode 2, Whitey's on the Moon.
Yes.
We begin the episode with that Jefferson's theme, and we've got the trio, our heroic trio, waking up in the mansion that they arrived at the end of Episode 1, and everything seems kind of tailor-made to their tastes. George's room is filled with books. Letty's room is filled with clothes that are all perfectly sized for her, that kind of thing. We end with
and they didn't give him a single thing.
That's right. I was like, what did they do for Atticus? They gave him a room. I don't know.
A room.
Like, you're special because you were related, so you don't get anything else. It ends with the mansion collapsing. Atticus successfully rescues his dad, Montrose, but George, one of our heroic trio, who was shot earlier, succumbs to his wounds, dies.
Yes.
So that's the episode. Paul, what's your thought on Episode 2?
Well, I really enjoyed it, and I think because they made some radical. They moved further than I would have thought. I would have thought they might have gotten more than one episode in that house.
Big shock, actually.
And just 2 episodes initially in the country. Yeah, so, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. We do see in the trailer for next week, it suggests that they're back in Chicago. So that perhaps they traveled back west with the knowledge of what they've done here in New England. Perhaps. Now, again, as you mentioned, this was a huge plot development. Like, they built up a world and then broke it.
Yes.
So it really is interesting. If that is the last time we see that, I would be very surprised. Like, it seems like they built this legacy. You almost can't just leave it. You've got to come back to how that connects to Atticus and his family and stuff. So, I'd
be really confused if we never saw any more of those devil dogs or whatever they are.
Whitey on the Moon is a reference to a poem that they use in the episode. Whitey on the Moon is a poem by Gil Scott Heron. So that is being played over the scene in which Atticus appears to be being sacrificed so that the villains can achieve some kind of immortality. What do you see as the significance behind playing Whitey on the Moon during that scene?
What I took from it, and it's partly influenced on this podcast that is official HBO Lovecraft podcast. One of the writers in the show and someone else was talking about how my interpretation is basically the plans that white men sort of, go about without thinking about black people, basically. In this case, actually, to the detriment of black people, really. It's like, so we're doing all this great stuff and we're not thinking about black people at all. The attempt to get into a nirvana or return to Eden, on the backs of black people, or Atticus is certainly a black man. So
right, exploiting Atticus for that purpose. And I guess in some ways too, the idea of it takes this supernatural concept of we're going to go back to Eden where we can be immortal. The real world equivalent is we're gonna go to the moon, right? Like it has a similar magical quality. Like we're gonna walk on the moon, at your expense. So I think that it fits the theme, right?
Sure. Yes.
We were right in a couple of predictions from last week. One thing I mentioned that I assumed the Necronomicon would show up. I think it still might actually physically show up, but they at least name dropped it in this episode. We talked about whether it seemed like George might have had an affair with Atticus's mom, and maybe he's Atticus's dad, and I think that at least is strongly hinted at.
Yes.
This wasn't much of a prediction, but the idea of like that mansion that they're going to, yes, it's going to be somehow connected to Atticus's family, and there'll be some kind of secret occult activity in the basement.
Yes.
And yes, there was.
Yeah. So, for anybody who's read Lovecraft, you tell me.
Right.
I could have made that provision.
Yeah. That would have been the shock if it hadn't. You'd be like, oh, it's just a house. What? No.
Like, root rot? What?
Did you actually go downstairs? Because I think you hear those sounds. We also did theorize that I think we weren't saying necessarily that one of the trio would die, but that if one of the trio were to die, it would probably be George, particularly because he gave his kind of like one last ride kind of thing before he took off when his wife wanted to come with him. He's like, next time, this will be my last time going without you. Oh boy. And so, yes, he passes away. Now, they've already set up a world in which those rules can certainly be broken. So in another dimension, he could be alive. They could also be dreaming this whole thing, and hopefully not, right? We don't want it was all a dream.
Yeah, no, we definitely don't want that.
But it could be. But it appears that they've killed off George.
It does.
So here's my take on the probable backstory, history of Atticus's family. You tell me if you think this is right or if you got some additions or corrections. All right. Seems like Titus Braithwaite made his money in the slave trade back in the day. He built this mansion in Ardham to basically lead this, Sons of Adam cult, unbothered by anyone else.
Yeah.
Sexually assaulted the slave Hannah in 1833 on the autumnal equinox. I'm going to guess because of that time, it's probably during some kind of a ritual being performed in the house. It seems, I get the idea that Hannah set the fire somehow and escaped.
I got the impression that let's try to do that thing where we get to go to Eden and then boom! I'm running away, just like the first,
Well, in other
words,
maybe Hannah found a way to tinker with it or something. I don't know. Maybe she's the reason it went wrong. Perhaps not. Maybe she.
I just keep thinking, like she says, it's hard to do. So I took, was it Christina who said that? That it's just not easy to do. It's just because you want to do it doesn't mean that you're able to do it.
The one reason I think maybe she had something to do with it, she being Hannah had something to do with it, was because when we see her, it seems like she can connect with Atticus through time in a way where he's seeing her in the past. Because when he's following her out of the mansion, her version is on fire. It's not actually on fire in the real world, in his world. So he's seeing that back in the day when it caught fire. But anyway, so she's running out. Well, then she stands at the thing. She's got a book. So she didn't just escape. She had knowledge. She's taking at least one of the big spell books, I think, with her. Okay. So it suggests to me that maybe she understands what that might be. Maybe she cast a spell. I'm just saying. Maybe.
I hear you, but
okay. So you're doubting that angle of it. Okay.
Well, I just if that's true, I don't like it. It would have worked if she hadn't foiled it. I'd rather her be like, this is crazy. Let me get out of here, and I'll take this book.
Well, she took the book and she escaped while pregnant.
And rather than that wouldn't work if it weren't for those pesky Negroes. I don't like that either. It's like rather the not Icarus. They're like, I'm so big, thinking about I'm so great that I'm gonna fly to heaven and then my wings melt. Rather than be like stupid humans keep trying to get them to
Which
eat.
Actually,
I'd rather that.
That actually plays into. I'll read it a little later, but the quote that I picked. The Lovecraft quote that I picked for this episode, I'll read it later, but it kind of goes into the idea of too much knowledge could be a bad thing if you try to play God. But so she is communicating with Atticus. I think that line of communication through the years or whatever, I think will continue. I think we will see her show up again in some way, that Atticus has some kind of familial link with her, and she'll show up again.
Maybe. She wasn't especially expressive there, though. So
true, they can't talk yet.
It might be like some sort of talisman or, a spirit guide or something that leads him in certain directions or whatever.
I like that notion. Yeah. I did look up fall of 1833, just in case there was something interesting about it. There is something somewhat interesting. It's not exactly on the autumnal equinox, but in August of 1833, Chicago was founded. So,
okay.
There you go.
Okay, all right.
So I don't know if that's an intentional tie-in or not, but it works. I did other research on the House on the Borderland, the story that George mentions, and it's the book that he pulls out and it opens the secret bookcase door. I was confused at first because I was like, I don't remember that Lovecraft story. It's not a Lovecraft story. That's why I didn't remember it. It is by an author named William Hope Hodgson. In fact, George mentions when he's all excited that his mansion room has a bunch of books, he names a bunch of authors. One of them is Hodgson. So he apparently is like, oh, look, that guy. The story plays out much like George says it does. That book apparently was praised by Lovecraft back in the day. So it's some kind of an influence on him. So it does have a Lovecraft tie that way. Supernatural horror. And the borderland of the title, the House on the Borderland, it represents basically it's on the border to another dimension. And so it's kind of, between worlds. I think it's the idea. This isn't really related. I might cut this out, but it reminds me of one of the, there's a module in Dungeons & Dragons called Keep on the Borderlands.
Okay.
Keep being a type of castle or a tower.
Okay, sure.
And so, but it's one of the introductory modules you get with, like, if you buy Dungeons & Dragons, here's your first level module, Keep on the Borderlands. My buddy Theron was like, oh, that sounds easy. Like, he thought the whole module was just keep on the border, like stay on the borderlands. He's like, as long as I don't move, I'm going to hit level 2, baby. Keep on the borderlands. The most boring hour you'll ever spend. Anyway. So if they called it House on the Borderlands, he would have understood it better. Anyway, there's an interesting conversation that Montrose has with George. George is bleeding out, but he's still alive, and he's having a heart-to-heart with his brother.
Yes.
And he mentions, you used to paint those welcome signs when the Negro League baseball team would come for training camp, and you'd welcome them at the bus station. Why'd you stop doing that? And Montrose says, oh yeah, my dad just beat the living hell out of me for it.
Yeah.
Okay, why did the dad beat up Montrose for painting a welcome sign for the Negro League baseball team?
I
don't know the answer to that. I'm asking.
Right. Yeah. I don't know the answer to that either.
I will say this. There was some language that came after that I was like, I created a theory. I'm going out on a limb on this one. But right after that, a couple of maybe 30 seconds later, because it's still in that same conversation of they're talking about, oh, you used to do this thing you liked, and then your dad beat it out of you. George says, you were brimming with love, and he mumbles something else, and then he says, nothing wrong with loving that much. And it connects to this baseball thing. So
okay.
I was like, either his dad didn't want him to play baseball, or maybe, is it possible he was gay?
Right.
There was maybe he had a relationship with a baseball player, or maybe, I don't know. That's a huge.
One of the people we saw in the area where Atticus was looking for his father is that guy who was, having a sex act performed on him by a man.
Oh yeah, okay.
So in that bar that he was looking for his father, there was that guy.
Yep. Anyway, just saying, maybe we find out that Montrose is gay. I don't know.
Right. Maybe we find that out, and then
and that's one of the reasons, his father rejected him for that reason, and he's always felt this anger perhaps in that way.
It certainly adds an interesting dimension to his relationship with Atticus's mom.
Right.
And his anger at his brother for being the one who might have fathered the child.
Yep. So it creates an interesting family dynamic for sure, if that's the case. We'll find out in episodes to come.
We will.
I think the most Lovecraftian scene so far of our 2 episodes is when Letty comes back from the dead, essentially. I don't know if she was dying and got saved, but whatever. She was shot. She was, and then it's kind of like the, if you, Atticus, participate in this sacrifice thing, we'll save your friends. I think it was the deal. And so she is brought back. And when she's brought back, you see her close to losing her sanity. Right?
Yeah.
She's like, and it's that moment where she's perceived something and she can't take it in.
Yeah.
And I think the acting is really good in that scene too. But like that level of I'm almost insane due to things I've witnessed. I think that is a very Lovecraftian idea, and so I think that scene in particular is really playing into Lovecraft themes.
Okay.
It was a little odd that she seemed, at least by the end of the episode, to have at least somewhat recovered her senses. Maybe not. Maybe it's just. I would be disappointed if there's not some long-term consequence, right? She was like,
sure,
I'm fighting sanity. Now I'm fine. Like, okay.
Yeah, you tend to have problems if someone's not consistently crazy. Like, wait a minute. Why aren't you always crazy? What? You went into a situation where you weren't crazy? How can you be crazy?
I don't believe it for a second. You can spend 2 minutes not crazy after having been crazy. Once crazy, always crazy. Okay, maybe not. But it would be cool to see that there's some long-term effects from this, and that it's not just like an episodic thing like, well, we got through that. All right, what next? One of the kind of set pieces for this episode is that each of them gets visited by an illusion made for their particular memories. And
yes. So
in the case of Letty, it's a phantasm of Atticus.
Yes.
In the case of Montrose, it's Dora. We assume
mother.
Atticus's mom.
Right.
And then for Atticus, it's this Korean woman named, I think this Gia.
Yes, Gia, yes.
And she tries to kill him the whole time. She's just trying to kill him. Tried to shoot him, stabbed him. She's got military gear on. He's trying not to kill her, I think, for a while, but then he pretty much is like, all right, hell with this, and he ends up choking her out, I think.
Yes.
So I went back to see what the IMDb was. She is the person that he talks to in episode 1 on the phone.
All right.
So when he calls Korea and doesn't talk, and she's like, "You went back, didn't you?" Or like, "That was a mistake." That's her. So, assuming that's correct, she is alive in current day, and she is living in Korea, South Korea. So, what do we make from that? Like, obviously, if that's her and he was on that phone, he called her for a reason, but couldn't say anything. Like, it was so tense. What is that? And then we see in this illusion of his, it's not like we love each other. It doesn't. I don't get that they're like in love. So it's not like I met someone while I was at war and I had to leave her. I don't get that feeling from what we saw in this dream sequence. So what is it about?
I can't imagine any other situation where you would need to communicate. I mean, it's possible that the relationship is over and maybe there's a child or something. But
now I looked up.
You don't get that either.
There is a little backstory for her on the wiki.
Oh, really?
Now, is this accurate? I don't know, but apparently it is. We'll assume it is for a second. It says she is a seemingly naive nursing student who is thrust into active service when war breaks out. And this is the interesting part. And a rash of soldier disappearances suggests she is more than what she seems.
Oh. Okay.
So originally I was thinking, oh, he went to war, he fell in love, but then he had to go home, and now he's got either she has a kid maybe or blah blah blah. But he's
right,
but now I'm wondering. I don't know. That fight scene just didn't suggest a loving relationship. I don't know. So what I was thinking is, if this is true, rash of soldier disappearances. So it makes me think that she's the one who's like secretly killing soldiers for whatever Lovecraftian reason might be. I'm going to guess he was a wounded soldier in her care. He says in this episode he did something he's not proud of. Maybe he finds out that she's killing soldiers, for whatever reason this is, and decides not to turn her in. I don't know, like sides with her in some weird way. I don't know. Okay. Maybe. So that's, but there's a story coming. One of these final 8 episodes, we're going to see the origin story for how he meets up with Jia, and she obviously is very important to him.
It's interesting. We'll see. I feel like the more that story exists, the less. Well, I don't know how to fit into everything else, so I'll be curious to see how they fit it.
Exactly.
At the moment,
especially
I feel like it's a distraction if there's too much there. But but if it's like but if it works, then it's great because it's just adding another dimension. So
another dimension. I will say this. Maybe we did see in that initial montage in the war montage in episode 1. One of the things we saw is this Princess of Mars.
Right.
And he's reading the book, Princess of Mars. Could she be like the embodiment to him of the Princess of Mars? I don't know. Like, in other words, Princess Mars is a god of war. He met this person in the war. Maybe he just associates her with this figure he's reading about, and somehow I don't know. Yeah, somehow she actually has. Anyway, just throwing that out there. I'm just throwing out a little theory grenade.
Right. Okay.
Launched it. All right. We'll just see how that goes off. All right. Here's the quote. I said I was going to try to do a quote, a Lovecraft quote for each of these episodes that somehow fits into the themes.
Okay.
So here's the quote for this time. It deals with the fact that if we ever knew everything there is to know, we'd either go crazy or just run away in fear. And so it's better that ignorance is bliss, basically. But okay. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of the infinity. And it was not meant that we should voyage far. Someday, the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. So there you go. So happy guy, he's like really just foretelling good times. Yes. Nothing. I hope everybody keeps learning and reading all they can. So that we get pushed back into another dark age. Anyway, he's got a dystopian view of the world.
He definitely does.
And the universe. Atticus and Samuel. So, Samuel wants to use Atticus to get back to this sense. What was it? It's like he said Adam put everything in its place.
Yes.
And before Eve showed up and ruined everything.
Right.
So if you could get back to that time, I guess you'd be immortal, but living by yourself? I don't know. Would you just be hanging out with Adam and you and Adam in the Garden of Eden? Or I'm not sure what the...
Yeah, I don't know. Presumably it's everyone in their group, gets to live in Eden, and who cares about anybody else? Or maybe it puts them... Doing that puts everybody else where they should be.
Racists.
Yeah.
Also, I liked that they, we saw in episode 1, one of the things that Atticus picked up when he was back at the house was this Count of Monte Cristo book. We learned that Montrose is one of his favorite stories, and then when they're trying to find Montrose in that cell, George is like, Count of Monte Cristo, and in the Count of Monte Cristo, he's trapped in a cell, but then he moves between cells by opening a gap in the wall. So that's how they get it out, and they find him, and he's not happy to see them at all.
No.
So like, damn it, why are you?
True Omar fashion.
That's right, Omar. You have any thoughts generally? Is there a certain plot element that struck you?
On rewatching something I hadn't thought of before, but one of the images that they were revealing around the time that Letty and Atticus were intimate is an image of a man and a woman, and the man having a snake where his appendage is. And if you look at the the story of Adam and Eve and the snake, I don't know that I ever thought of the snake being a part of the man, but it certainly suggests that a woman enticing a man via sex, so maybe her interest in sex is evil, and so her interest in the man is evil. And that's not knowledge so much, like, boy, she had to be smart, and that screwed everything up. It's like, boy, she had to seek sex out, and that's why she's fallen, So it just made me think of that.
A lot of religious overtones. Honestly, I was interested that they built a replica of this place, so it's not actually the place. It burned down. So like, oh yeah, this is a replica of the building that was originally built back in the day. You're like,
right.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So Samuel is dead, along with probably a lot of those cult members. They got turned to stone and then crushed. However, the woman, forgetting her name,
Christina,
I believe, survived. So I think she's still potentially a plot point, a character.
And William, I presumed, also survived.
Okay, the butler, not butler.
Yes.
The maybe her boyfriend. I don't know how he put it.
Well, she says he's a boy and sometimes my friend.
Right. Odd way to put it.
Yes,
but yeah, so they probably survived as well.
Yeah, and that, to me, certainly she's a big question mark, and the fact that she gleefully shepherded one of these beasts into being.
Yes, so they use cows to give birth to these monsters.
Yes. So the fact that she's involved in that willingly, makes me think that she might still be a threat to them. And, she was just, as you would prefer, for someone who's going to be a threat throughout a series as opposed to dying in the second episode.
Yes.
Should not be, should be a little smarter, hopefully, and maybe not willing to act quickly just to get what they want,
It does make me think that there is more, we will see Samuel again in some way, based on the fact that we're in a world where magic exists and there's dimensions and all kinds of things.
Right.
To set him up as this big bad and then knock him off in episode 2.
A very big star to dispose of so quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it was surprising. Didn't they see it coming?
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes me think somewhere in the next 8 episodes, we may see a return. Or if they come back to Chicago, they'll have a reason to return to New England, to Lovecraft country again before the season ends, I would think.
Right, yeah, I would think. I'd be surprised and be very strange if we did not see Christina and William again.
Right. Well, she's going to be driving around probably in a, silver Bentley. It's hard to miss. She's going to be like, okay, let's just drive in a very a brown, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a crappy car from the 60s, but whatever that would be.
Edsel. I don't know.
And there you go. She's not going to be in that. No. She's going to be very noticeable. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Episode 2. If you've got some comments out there, please stick them down in the comments. Be happy to chat with you about your thoughts on episode 2. we'll be back for the rest of the season, and we're finishing up. Got a couple of more recaps for Umbrella Academy, and then we're going to turn our attention to The Boys, which is coming out very soon as well. So, thank you, Paul.
You're welcome, Matt.
Appreciate it, sir. And we'll talk to you guys later. Bye, everybody. Boop.